Welcome back. You tuned into Inspired Afternoons with me, Mariam Mia, and now we are going to be discussing hypersexuality of children's television program. And joining me in studio is my producer and actually going to be co-hosting this segment here. Dudu has produced it in something that she feels she picked up while observing television, cartoons in particular, and really concerning, especially in this being Women's Month in August, as well as the increase incidence of gender violence, gender-based violence that's being perpetuated in South Africa, and something to discuss. Uh, are we pleased that we've got educational psychologist Fred Schouwink on the line? He'll be joining us to actually advise us and offer counsel and advice regarding this issue and also delve into the topic of hypersexuality. So Fred is a registered educational psychologist. He currently works in the private education sector at Saheti. He's a psychologist at Saheti School, as well as a lecturer at SA CAP. His special interest lies in working with gender diversity as well as loss and trauma amongst children, adolescents, and young adults. So let's welcome Fred. Good afternoon and welcome to Inspired Afternoons here on Salam Media, Fred.
Good afternoon, Miriam and Dudu. Thank you for having me.
So I'm gonna hand over to Dudu because Dudu actually wants to introduce the topic and her concerns in terms of hypersexuality of children's television programs.
So basically, as we all know, hypersexuality is one of the biggest things, issues within television industry. So if you're in the media industry, they always use this term that sex sells, which is precisely not a good thing because not, we have children over a certain age that are actually watching certain shows or watches or also actually interacting differently, with the television channels. So, what do you, Fred, define as hypersexuality in terms of a child within the ages of 11, 12, and going into the teenage years?
Hmm. If we look at the portrayal of children in some programs on television, Dudu, this hypersexuality really refers to portraying girls and women as solely being sexual creatures and that their value comes from their sexual appeal or their behavior, etc., to the exclusion of all other characteristics. So it gives us a very one-sided view of girls and women, and very often girls internalize this image, and this is where the problem comes in.
So, with characters, I've seen myself with characters such as in the movie Hercules, the female character was wearing a dress and she was dancing around, and the next minute, her dress slides in, and you can see from one side. And it's not just in such movies, and it's actually animated movies that we're talking about. Also, we see it in the way to El Dorado, which is a Disney. Both these movies are Disney produced movies, and it's not the first time. We also see it in Finding what's this. I don't remember. It's something about Rob. What's this? A movie about a famous character, Disney character, which is a rabbit, one of these Disney characters. So we see that one of the ladies there's also shaped in a certain way, in a certain manner. These women are dressed and shaped in that way. What type of impact do you think it has on female growing up in this hypersexualized world, that now they don't just see it now in just television shows that are not meant for them, but now they also see it in also something that should be comfortable for them because they're kids?
Mm. And you know what, to add to that, Dudu, it's not just the animation and the television that's actually designed for children, as you've mentioned. It goes far beyond that. It goes onto social media. We see this in video games that children are playing, the portrayal of women. So, regardless of the media, these days you see it everywhere. And so the exposure rate is just so much higher than what it was, a couple of years ago. A couple of decades ago, you had the celebrities and
Mhm.
girls kind of imitated them. Now they have that to deal with, and girls, for example, that would go onto social media, digitally edit a photo or something about themselves, and so there's just so much feedback that children are getting, especially girls, because the research shows us very clearly that girls are much more hypersexualized in terms of their portrayal on many different media.
So does it have any what type of effect do you think it has on them being, seen as sexual creatures? Because I can see from a male's perspective what they think of a character like that, but from a female perspective, from a young girl that's looking at that, what do they see when they look at those female characters?
The impact is tremendous, and we really shouldn't underplay it. There's actually different areas of a girl's psychology that is affected. So let me just give you a bit of an idea of what this entails. So, firstly, there's been quite a bit of research done on the cognitive impact. In other words, the impact on your ability to do well at school, for example. If you're constantly worried about how am I looking, how do others see me, that your attention is not available for academic learning. So there's very good research that support the notion that, if girls are so obsessed with how they are looking like because of the message they are getting, academics are impacted. Secondly, is the emotional and the psychological impact. So very often, when you get these images, you are comparing yourself to these. I mean, that is at the heart of the issue that we are really talking
And
about.
it's quite
So
funny
this
having to
affects.
compare yourself to a cartoon.
Sure.
Okay,
Can
Fred,
you hear
I
me?
want to come in here and I just want to do the reversal of roles here because then if you look at it from a male side, we asking males, and rightfully so, that they need to be more sensitive, have respect for women, understand the emotional sensitivity of a female. I think, but above all, it's respect and not to view women as an object of desire. But yet, since the time they small, they primed. It's everywhere. If you look at Powerpuff Girls, see the shape, the curves there. Everyone, even the Disney characters, they have that hourglass body. And then, like you say, the subtle nuances of that skirt lifting and this lifting and creating the desire within a male child. So we expect later on from teenage years boys to be sensitive to females in it, but yet from the time they're watching television or social media, that everything is geared to prime them to view females in that way in terms of visual stimuli wherever they go. Secondly, if you look at male characters, Johnny Bravo, he's always macho,
Muscle.
he's got muscles, his
Mm,
hair is on point, and he's always there to save a fragile woman who cannot help herself. And all, even the Disney princesses, the prince needs to come and save the protagonist, the character. It's always the male that need. She's vulnerable. She can't fend for herself. She needs saving. So are these stereotypes then perpetuated? And how do we overcome this? What can we do?
sure. It is so true because boys internalize this notion that, to be successful and to be attractive means that you have to be dominant towards a girl, you have to have power and aggression. So that certainly is the message that boys are getting. And the whole media industry is designed that way. Now, how do we address it? I think it really starts with the messages that men are giving women. So much of the feedback that girls often get is around the appearance. You're such a beautiful girl. But for the boys, we often acknowledge their strength in their athletic abilities and how smart they are, etc. And I think here we need to get a bit of a balance that the feedback that we give girls also has to be around their abilities and the effort that they are putting in. It was interesting in preparing for this interview that they found that one way to raise the self esteem of a girl is for her to participate in athletics and the feedback that she gets from that. So men, boys, fathers, uncles, brothers, they don't just give feedback around the appearance of the girl, but also her abilities. And I think what's missing for me in South African schools, for example, is that there isn't enough discourse and discussion around being critical about what you see on television. We are just consumers, but we don't stop and think about why things are portrayed the way they are. So for me, I think that's what we need to do. We need to educate our children, and parents need to educate themselves as well around being critical media users. and to engage with girls around these conversations, to have a discussion around what they are seeing on television. And I think if we can open up that dialogue, that goes a long way for girls to step back and really think about this critically. And just one more point around this, I think because we've got so much media out there at the moment, many, as I've said, portray girls in a certain way. But there are also groups on Facebook, on Twitter, and Instagram that challenges these portrayal of women. And I think if we can get our older girl children, our adolescents, to engage on those platforms where they start challenging the whole idea of male dominance and how women are portrayed, I think that can be a very powerful counter, movement to challenge these ideas.
But in terms of now addressing both genders, what can parents do to change that what's his ideology of how a female should be, that her beauty and her beauty is more important than her brains, and for a boy his masculinity is more important than anything else. How can parents promote a better way of children understanding their own self?
It starts in the household. So, how do parents themselves act in the household? What does dad say about women? What does mom say about men? So those kind of discussions, those discourses, those conversations are very important because at the end of the day, it's about what is being modeled to a child. That's the first place where we learn about life, how our parents behave and what they say. So I think parents need to have that awareness about the conversations and the comments that they make about the other gender. So that's one place to start. But also realizing that children live in a bigger world, not just in families, but they go to school, they're exposed to media, etc. So it really is important to encourage conversation. That is really what this boils down to. Conversation and good role models goes a long way in challenging these stereotypes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. And then, Fred, you are active in a school environment as well, being an educational psychologist in a educational institution. And while for me the focus is so much on a female, it's the female that has to put in the extra effort. It's a female that has to go forward and prove herself in terms of her ability and buck the trends and change perceptions in terms of please don't view us like this and that. And I just feel all the responsibility lands on the female. And should we be then engaging at home as well, our sons, in terms of even in terms of household chores? Should the expectation should be the same in terms of food preparation, tidying up the home, things like that. So when you bring up your children in terms of household chores, uh, there should be no difference. So irrespective whether you're a female child or male child, bed should be made. If somebody's hungry and you're the elder brother and you're in matric, you're more than capable of making a sandwich for your sister who's, let's say, in grade 7. So, as parents, should we be promoting this as well? And then at school level, um, should we incorporate in our life orientation program or counseling session in terms of males understanding females, in terms of seeing them for their abilities and who they are? And I know at schools normally when females reach puberty, there will be a talk on the female in terms of this is your body changes and what's going to happen to you. And there's a real emphasis, and couple of lessons a week are dedicated towards the grade 6 girls, grade 7 girls, and then maybe the grade 8s in high school. But I don't see that same type of effort and emphasis placed on the males to say going through this, but females are going to go through this in terms of the constraints and what they go through in terms of puberty and how they experience changes in the body are more profound than what males, in terms of their challenges. For example, just to source sanitary pads for females, these are challenges. There might be 1 or 2 days in terms of school, in terms of the emotions that run with this. Please understand, especially in a co-ed school, you need to be more understanding and compassionate towards your female peers. Are there such programs for males? If not, is it important to have such type of workshops, programs in terms of life orientation, counseling for males to better understand this? So the emphasis not so much on the females trying to breakthrough in whatever sphere, but also educating males about these issues?
I think that there are a lot of guidelines available on terms of what is international best practice with sexual education in schools. And there's really two components to it. There's the biology that I think you're also referring to, which is important for both boys and girls to be aware of. But it has to go one step further. You know, we have to place sexuality education within the context of relationships. And if we can have that kind of discussion with children around gender roles and challenging gender roles and challenging male privilege, um, there we can do quite a bit. And it has to go the other way around as well. You know, a lot of boys are also oppressed by the male code or the boy code, which says this is one way of being a man. So it really has to be balanced. And I think, you know, as you've mentioned, you know, girls have to often work so much harder. So in terms of the school environment, we also have to give girls the opportunity to participate on levels where they might in the past not have, like in the sciences, in IT, in sport, etc. And to have those kind of opportunities. So it's not just in the life orientation curriculum where we just talk about the sexuality, it's about relationships. And I think across the curriculum, if teachers can make a concerted effort to show good, positive female role models in the various areas. So maybe we've got a science lesson, and today I can talk about a female leader in the sciences. That kind of exposure gives us a different story about women and the power that they have.
This is fascinating, and I think for parents out there, even educators out there, this is real food for thought in terms of coming out from this COVID period and what South Africa experienced in terms of the escalation in gender-based violence and things like this. I think these are the kind of programs that we need to be looking in the home front conversations to be having with our children as well in school. Like you say, we need to see what is international best practice in terms of gender types, gender roles, and somewhere along the line, the status quo has to change if we want to have positive relationships in society, domestic relationships.
Absolutely. And that's at the end of the day what we want for our children, eh? That they have the opportunities to do well in life. And especially for girl children, I think we have to acknowledge that we're definitely not there yet. There is still quite a lot of oppression of girls and women, not just here in South Africa, but across the world. And it really all starts at home. That is always the first place. What children see is what they do and that they internalize. So I think that's an important message.
And I think for us here in the media space, we need to put a lot more pressure in, I think, production companies, producers, executive producers, film houses, people like Netflix as well, in terms of we need to change mindsets. Yes, I know television, yeah, TV program is about entertaining, but I think producers, executive producers, directors need to be cognizant of those visual cues, especially when it comes to a very impressionable age, in younger children as well, in the teenage age, because
And
we no longer just purveyors of media and we have no say today with the various platforms. We can actually, we have the power through the social media platforms to engage the who's who in any Hollywood, Bollywood, Nollywood, wherever it is. We have that power, and I think we need to force the media and entertainment industry also to be more cognizant in terms of the content they put out, even if it's in the name of entertainment.
I think media houses have the ethical responsibility to, in actual fact, show body diversity because the images that girls are getting are of thin, young, you know, shapes, etc. But that's not reflective of reality. So I think if filmmakers, producers, directors, we can have more body diversity and to normalize that and not shame people for having different bodies and expressions. I think that goes a long way also to address these stereotypes.
Yes, and just thinking about our adverts as well, even in the advertising space, like they say, it
Mm.
was an old adage that sex care sells, and you always, if you want to sell tires or you want to sell upmarket brand of motor cars, it was always that, yeah,
Masculine
that
and
female
feminine.
woman there with her skimpy clad outfit, walking around parading the car, or even the cigarette adverts, which, those the macho male with the female around him, and that stereotype of to be the cool man and things like that. And I think even in the advertising space, advertisers need to realize your consumers are no longer ignorant. And if you look at who your consumer base is, actually the larger amount are females than
Mm,
males in most things, even in cars. Who
sure.
purchases cars now? And that needs to change. And you need to focus on the car and the features and that. Then the selling point of using females to sell. So I think all around in the advertising space, all the creative directors and things like that have, like you said, that ethical responsibility on how we sell things.
Miriam, they did a study looking at print media, and they showed that
Hmm.
52% of the portrayal of women was sexualized. If they look at the magazines produced for men, like your Men's Health, etc., it goes up by 79% of women betrayed in a sexualized manner. So, yes, sex sells, but what is the ethical responsibility we have if we, as men, are going to address these issues, and also for people in the media, as you've mentioned?
Fred, thank you. Any closing remarks from your side before I let you go?
I think just to conclude by saying that, let's show girls the positive role models out there. Let's make them realize that your worth as a human being is not reliant on how you look, but it is much more to you as a person.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your time and this very important discussion here today on Inspired Afternoons on Salam Media. And hopefully, we can chat to you again in the future with a much appreciated good afternoon.
Thank you, Miriam. Thanks, Dudu.
And thank you very much for your input on this. So we've learned so much to say that, a woman should not actually be defined by her outer appearance, but actually her brains matter. So educate a girl child and make her a better person, and also encourage her to be the best that she can, because there's no one actually that can be her, and she doesn't have to be anyone to actually be herself. So that is the biggest educational platform that we can what's this point that we can share.
And for me, Dudu, I think the importance is um, we not should be not just be passive consumers of any
Anything.
visual. So be it television programs, YouTube videos, anything that we see on social platforms, on the media, we need to criticize. We need to see it with an objective eye, and where it's found lacking or wanting. So we need to train our children that when they're watching things, they need to see, what, this is not how we should be and life is and whatever. So I think a very positive take from this is, as a parent as well, especially if we have young kids, is ask them to objectively view, question what they're viewing. And I think it's important as well, for from the developmental stage in terms of early childhood development, uh, before you allow your child to be a consumer of any program, any cartoon. Yes, there might be fantastic morals and messages behind programs, general ones and things like that. But, and that always good times evil and the normal ones that we go, but we need to really critically inspect, view programs, look for visual stimuli that might be priming our children before we put them in front of the television and allow them. So I think every program needs to be screened, and you need to look at the subtle messages behind it before we allow our children to be consumers of these cartoons. And listen, I think that Disney has successfully able to market themselves and produce as a safe, lovely, innocent, beautiful. It's Disney, wishes come true. All that Hollywood jargon that's inculcated to us, that it's a safe space, a magical land to feed into that safeness here. But really, we need to change.
Things that you would notice,
Yeah, a Disney production is not safe from all these. In fact, the ones you put out are actually in terms Disney
as you
productions.
mentioned also with the Disney princess characters, the fact that we haven't actually had so much promotion on female heroes that the princess can also still be the queen, and she can also still rule her own. She can still have her own a monarchy and still rule it. She always needs to be vulnerable. She always needs to be in that position of vulnerability that she needs a male, but she doesn't actually. So I think Disney can go a long way in producing such content for young girls to look at, not just, and also in terms of what Fred mentioned, that it's not like, girls get consumed by looking at a certain shape of a woman's body and feel like that's what I want. What about the characters that are coming into, like, further on? They can produce characters that represent different body of woman, represent different skin color of woman, represent different hair texture of woman, as a representation of differences. And it's okay to be different. It's okay to not have that body. It's okay to be just yourself.
And also think, I know we're talking about hypersexualization, but also in terms of moral and values and what you do, it's always the evil queen, the wicked stepmother. It was and always that one person who actually influences the male in terms of the father was a good king, lost the mother, and it's always the stepmother that's weak. So it's always the female in those cartoons who are in the way, who are wicked, who are evil, who are like that. So again, you negatively portraying female stereotypes in terms of this. A female motherly figure turns out to be cruel. They were. That's, I think, yeah, that's really the storyline of Disney, which we need to start changing, and we need to critically evaluate. There's no such thing as safe to watch. As a parent, you will need to understand, and we need to screen what our children are consuming in all forms of media, and not only media, in terms of gaming as well. So that is a whole new topic which I will leave to you to produce a segment, and we can discuss and educate.
Definitely.
And hopefully all these programs are geared towards us taking action and we being the instrument of change in society.
Yes, most definitely.
Okay. Thanks so much for the segment and for the production of it and for your input as well. I'm sure looking forward to many of these in the future. And we're going to go for a short break, and then we're going to be into our business accelerator segment with Suleika Mohammed from Pearls to Paradise.